Now we're moving to our featured speaker, who has just returned from a UN keynote. This is actually another UN occasion where she was moderating a panel. And she works around the world helping people envision optimal futures for themselves and their communities. And she does this through activating the human potential within us. So she's going to share her philosophy, her paradigms, and her insight with us today. She's also does this on a global scale because she is the creator and founder of World Dream Day, which is an annual celebration around the world on September 25th each year. It's a holiday, and it helps envision best outcomes for the world, the hopes, dreams for humanity. So now she's going to bring it down to the human, personal level today for us at Creative Mornings. Her name is Ozioma Egwuonwu, and I'd like to welcome her to Creative Mornings.
So how are we feeling? Feeling good? Feeling present? That's amazing. So to this presence that we're feeling, this goodness that we're feeling, I want to also invite a moment of gratitude and acknowledgement to each and every single one of you for showing up for this moment. Many people don't wake up this early to be able to show up for possibility, for themselves, to commune and connect with each other. It's just so easy, right? To just stay in the bed or not to make the time or to say, you know what, I'll catch you online. But no, we are the ones who are raising our hands and saying, we are here to show up together as community. And so with that, we open the space and we acknowledge that within us here who have gathered, there is a portal of possibility that is emerging right now as we speak. And if we acknowledge it in this moment, we can acknowledge it in any moment and become aware that no matter where we are, no matter what stage of our challenges, there is always possibility. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about and connecting to is the spirit of possibility, the conversation of human potential that is so essential now. In fact, probably more than ever. And I want to share my intention with you. And each of these words has significance. My intention for our time together, which will be brief, is that you leave this experience, and not just from what we share here, but the entire experience, with new ideas and perspectives, as well as a greater sense of possibility as it relates to not only who you are. So there's a transformation at the identity level in who you consider yourself to be, as well as how you approach the present moment and your potential to create brilliant futures. Because it is about the way in which we connect to and conceive of ourselves. It's about how we hold the moment. And it's also about the way in which we imagine and envision what is possible for us. Because we can't live the lives, create the work, build the businesses, build the communities that we desire if we are not actually attuned at multiple levels. So this is a multi-dimensional conversation we're going to get into today. And it is all about transformation. For the past almost 20 years, I know I look like I'm 12, no, but for the past 20 years, I've been working on this conversation at multiple levels. Transformation at the individual, at the community, at the business level, and also at the global scale. And I do this with my business, Burnbright International. But for me, the greatest joy is doing this as it relates to what's called World Dream Day, which Truth has mentioned is a global day of activation that supports dreamers to actually move forward, that activates the global imagination. But what we're really doing is acknowledging that held within a dream is hope for the future. And held within each dreamer, every single one of you is a wealth of potential. So if we have a day that is dedicated to human potential and our relationship with all of life, is it not possible that with each celebration, we advance that global agenda of a better world? So this is about intentionality. And around the world, World Dream Day has become something of a phenomenon. And if you want to hear more about it, please get in touch with me. But our conversation today is to acknowledge the context whereby which we are connected in, which is a world in transition. How many of you believe that our world right now is in the midst of massive change, right? It goes without saying. Societal, economic, political, technological challenges. In fact, if we look at the anatomy of a transition, we see that there is this notion of an emerging ending, and then we get engulfed in this messy middle. And so we're seeing our systems and our structures begin to crumble. And we're starting to feel as if there is mess to the left, to the right, and that we're immersed in it, in the muckiness of it all. And in that muck, there's also the potential for a new beginning. And this is happening over and over and over again. In fact, many people use this word, the liminal. What does it mean for us to be in this liminal space? And you can see that the use of that word itself has increased over time. But what does it really mean? It means that we are basically in an intermediate state, every single one of us, on our individual level, personal context, as well as in our other structures and systems. And if we look at it within the context of a rite of passage, which is what I do believe that we are immersed in, is that there is this first state of awareness where we begin. And then we move into the separation of business as usual, the normal context, the world as we know it. And we step into this intermediary space. And there is a separation that happens before that. But once we are in that space of liminality, so much happens in that space. And then we have to incorporate what we've learned. We have to begin to be able to say, how do I use what emerges from this context? And then from that, we emerge anew. And this happens over and over and over again. And so I want to share with you very briefly. Can I share with you very briefly my own story of liminality in service to your own shift? And so, in 2014, I had already left corporate America. And as many of us who leave one state of being, I was so happy. Let's go, let's start, let's make things happen. And 2014 was a powerful year. I was doing a lot on television. I was supporting initiatives like Bring Back Our Girls and Speaking Truth to Power. I was working with the mayor of a city called Newburgh, New York. And I was so immersed and connected and being in service. How many of you know that feeling of when it's like, I just want to serve, I just want to give, I just want to be present, right? What it means, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in our business, we just want to make that difference. And what I found is in that process, if we're not balanced, we end up in a different stage. And this is me a few years later, showing up for everyone and not showing up for myself. I had gained 20 pounds. I was having so many health issues. And what was also happening is I was watching the ways in which the community itself was not operating well. And I was taking that in and I was internalizing that. How many of us can relate when we're just internalizing the context of that which we find ourselves in and we feel unmoored, disconnected, right? And we feel like we're actually being overwhelmed and pressed upon by the context we find ourselves in. And it's at that moment, especially when we think about this notion of burnout, that we have to go within. And so that's what happened to me. I had to go within and create a new way of understanding and relating to life itself. And from that space, which I'm going to be walking you through, a new reality began to emerge because I began to ask different questions. I began to show up for myself and for that reality, and everything began to change. I created a community center, the first ever Newburgh Dream Center, that created a different way in which we can operate together based off of what I was seeing was needed. And then what began to happen is how I showed up on the global context also began to change. And this is an image of me doing a talk that's focused on nonviolence in a community that had actually been called the murder capital of New York at one time. and then also moderating a global citizenship and education session at the United Nations. And as a result of this different way of being, I had more to give to those who actually needed it. In the community, being immersed. This is actually the backyard of the Dream Center, where we were teaching young kids how to create a labyrinth and walk with their dreams. And this is a mural that we created with the community, as well as dream walls that we would create around the community to support their dreams. And then in 2022, Success Magazine had its 125th anniversary, and I was named as one of the leaders around the world that's making a difference and getting results. And the journey continues. And why do I say the journey continues? Because every single breakdown and breakthrough is followed by another one and another one. And we have to become adept at that, especially in this context. It isn't a one and done. So how do we build capacity and really gain an understanding of moving with these shifts? And it lives within the domain of human potential. How do we actually connect to that? And there have been many models of human potential. How many of you guys know this one? The hero's journey. How many of you guys have heard of the hero's journey, right? Almost every single one of us. This idea that the hero leaves the ordinary context and then goes on a journey, meets allies, meets enemies, faces the dragon, comes back with the boon, and comes back to the old context, but they're transformed, right? And many movies like Star Wars and many others have been modeled around this shift. There's also Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which presupposes that we start off with our physiological needs, and it's all about moving up from safety, love, and belonging, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. But many people know that there's actually more to this than just self-actualization. It's about self-transcendence, moving beyond ourselves and connecting to something greater, something more than just our immediate desires and needs. And so I want to speak and share with you now and invite you to begin to explore your own context with a different model, a model that was inspired by a conversation I had with one of my mentors, Dr. Jean Houston. And it's framed in this idea of a quest, because every single one of us are on a quest to become that which we desire to truly become even more of. And I'm inspired by this quote by Paulo Coelho. Every human being has a personal legend to be fulfilled, and this is our reason for being in the world. Let's take a moment right now and consider, how many of you actually believe that you have a personal legend? A couple. Raise your hands if you believe it, that you feel and sense that there's something inside of you. I would argue that every single one of us actually do, even if it's the legend that you leave for the people that love you and that you love. Even it's about a legend that you leave for that person you said hello to every single morning. You are legendary. So the key is for us to recontextualize the ways in which we own what it means to live legendary and realize that it's not just for those famous people or the people in the book. It is for every single one of us, this potential to really connect to what is our legacy and what is that legend that we are actually invited to live. And so this model that I'm going to share with you is rooted in that, the pattern of human emergence. And as I share it, I really want you to think about, where do you place yourselves on this journey? We start in a space of the void. How many of you have had a breakdown, right? Or a moment where you said, oh my God, everything's crumbling. We begin in this space of the void. Either it's we've completed one cycle and we're entering into something new, or we've totally wiped out. And we feel that there's nothing more, and we're questioning. And in this space of the void is also the space where all possibilities exist, and it's also a space of pure fear. Because if everything is possible, what if I can't do it? What if it's not for me? All these questions exist in the space of the void. And as we move from the void, we find that we start to ask different questions. We say, there has to be more to life than this. There has to be more to life than addiction, depression, feeling sad. Or there has to be more than the same old. Every day I'm waking up, going to work, I'm not satisfied. There has to be more to me than this. How many of you have asked that question at one point in your life? There has to be more. There has to be something different. This can't be what life is all about, right? And then we begin to realize from that question where we acknowledge that the current reality is not satisfying or sufficient, we then realize the next step is that we have to differentiate. We realize I am not just any seed. I am an acorn, damn it. And if I'm an acorn, what is my potential? Someone say it. What is my potential if I'm an acorn? An oak tree, right? This grand, big possibility, or me at my highest, fullest, most fulfilled state of awareness, state of contribution, state of connection. So this is the space where we begin to differentiate and we acknowledge that we aren't just any desire to be an artist. I'm not just any artist. I'm not just a painter. I am this type of painter. I'm an expressionist. I'm not just any writer. I'm not just any mother. I'm not just any friend. I'm a friend that shows up in these ways. And from that space of awareness, we realize, okay, I acknowledge that my desires aren't just any old desires. I have to now get on the journey of collecting the wisdom, right? The caterpillar begins to eat all the food, the nutrients that is required for its next level, unbeknownst to them. And that next level is about going within to that cocoon state and dissolving everything that you've known, the version of yourself that you were, in order to become something different. And we don't really know what that is. But the seeds and the template, we know this, the butterfly's imaginal cells are already present. And just like that, who you desire to become more of, or that which you desire to experience more of, is already present right now within you, waiting for you to choose, to select it, to decide. And so the next step from that, as we dissolve the old limiting beliefs and patterns and the old ways of being and doing and knowing, we emerge as the butterfly. And this symbol is a symbol that most transformational models stop at. They say, oh, I'm the butterfly. I'm my authentic self. And here I am, and let's go. But there's something more in this model than just being the butterfly. The more that you show up as your authentic, true self, living the life, creating the work, being the version of you that you know you are truly called to become, you gain mastery. And the symbol for mastery is that of the dragonfly. You have a different way of seeing the world. You have a different way of showing up and moving about. And from that state of mastery, you then stabilize in that shift. And the symbol for that is the lotus, where the old addictions, the old ways of being and doing, you are now above it, and you are stabilized in the shift that you've been able to activate within on the journey. And the final stage in this model is the diamond stage of awareness, where we are able to shine and share our multi-dimensional, multifaceted light, the gifts of what we learned along the journey. And so this pattern, this model, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And what is beautiful about this is that it works across different cultures. It's something that is symbolic, that works with our primordial patterns of awareness and becoming, to go from a state of the unknown to then realize that there's more or something different, to realizing the actual specificity of our goal, our aims, our desires, and then to go upon the journey of becoming that which is our true awareness, and then emerging to be able to give a contribution. And what's also interesting about this model is you can be a caterpillar in your relationships. You can be a diamond in your finances. You can be at different stages in this model. It is not about saying, all my life, I'm now going to become a diamond. It's about realizing that as it relates to your developmental journey, you can place yourself and consider, what is my next step? And so I want to invite you now to go within and to identify, where do you place yourself on this as it relates to what you're up to? Whether it's in your finances, your creative practice, your spiritual practice. And then from that space of where you are on the journey, what intention can you set for your next step? What do you have to begin to believe, to do, to activate? And we're going to get into that a little bit more, because this is all about deliberate creation and acknowledging that every single one of us have that creative capacity. It's about being able to be invited to activate it. Each of us possess this power of human brilliance. And the more that we show up every single day to begin to activate it more fully, the ways in which we then will be able to transform. And when we do, the quality of our lives, because again, this is a life conversation, but it also can be about our businesses and that which we create in our community. Life itself becomes a canvas for our mastery, an invitation for us to show up in different ways, to make a contribution in different ways. But life also becomes an extraordinary journey. We're not just living the regular ways of showing up, we're showing up differently. And life also becomes an illuminated work of art. And so I want to invite us into a practice right now so that we can actually get a glimpse for every single one of us here about our own possibility. So I invite you to close your eyes just for a moment and get comfortable wherever you are. And take a deep and cleansing breath in and out. And in the screen of your mind, I invite you to see nothing but beautiful, pristine white. White above you and white all around you. And as you begin to become comfortable in this white environment, I invite you to see in the far area of this space, this liminal space, a canvas. And you move towards this canvas. And as you stare at this canvas with curiosity, you silently ask yourself, what is it that I would like to paint? What is it that I would like to create at this stage of my journey? And as if by magic, in your hand, you feel that there's a paintbrush, as well as paint of your chosen colors. You dip your hand, you dip the paintbrush into one color, just one color. And you take the paintbrush and place it against the canvas. And just as if it's like by magic, an entire image. And you're watching this image emerge on this canvas. It's a snapshot of your desired future. Just take a moment right now to admire what is on this canvas, knowing that this is what's waiting for you. This is what you're being invited to enter into. And as you gaze at this image, something powerful begins to emerge. You start to feel that you're being drawn into this image, being drawn somehow into this unfoldment. And before you know it, you have entered into this image. And your story is beginning to unfold. Allow yourself to feel and experience the power and the potential of who you are truly meant to become. See yourself speaking to the people that you are meant to connect to. Feel yourself having the experiences and feeling the emotions that you're meant to feel. Just allow the story to unfold. And connect to that version of you And if you can't see any images, just invite yourself to connect to the feeling, the sense, the felt sense of who you are truly meant to become in these times. And just allow that feeling. It could be more security. It could be more power. It could be more loving. Just allow that version of you to inhabit you and live within you in this moment. And in this space, you begin to see that there's a door and you're walking towards it. And you're opening up the door, but you're not stepping in. You're opening up the door and you're gazing out and seeing this wide expanse of possibility. And as you gaze out into this space, you acknowledge that there's nothing holding you back, that there's just open, wide open space and wide open possibility. I invite you to bring a smile, a small smile to your face, a small smile of acknowledgement, acknowledging that this presence and power that lives within you is just waiting for you to step through the door. And you know that this door is available for you at any moment. And with this sense of confidence, you close this door, knowing that you can enter it anytime you choose. And now you're coming back through the image into the white space. And you're just gazing again at the image itself that emerged for you. And just once more, get that felt sense of what it is you are truly here to do and who you are truly meant to become for these times. And now I invite you to join me back in this space. You feel yourself re-emerging into this space where all of us are waiting to take the next step. And once I see all of your eyes opening, we'll move to the next stage. We have the creative power of imagination to tap in and to see these beautiful worlds. But if we don't then pair that with strategy and pair that with activated commitment, we will not be able to become the versions of ourselves that we desire to become. So here is my gift to you. It's a shortcut to be able to activate your desired futures. And there's many different ways in the work that I do that we work with this. But we start off with really getting clear on what is the desired experience. And then we acknowledge that as it relates to this area of my life or this area of my business, I know that I'm going to face challenges. Name the challenges. Get comfortable and get clear that things may not be easy. Very often what stops us is this belief that everything's supposed to be easy. And sometimes it is, but very often it isn't. And the more that we can pre-frame and get clear on the challenge and then acknowledge what are the strengths and the capacities that exist within me. Where have I been? How have I been successful? Or who do I admire that's been successful? And how do I leverage those strengths in order to achieve and to experience and to express more of what I desire? And then we identify what are the action steps that are required. What's one action step that I could take So inviting you right now to think about what is one action step that can support you in, again, I keep speaking about experience, embody, express. Because sometimes these shifts will not be anything that anyone else will see. It's about how you yourself on the internal stage will transform. And then lastly, what is the affirmation that you can create for yourself to keep you supported and nourished and moving forward? And this voyage of moving from one stage to the other is just beginning. Because there's many tools and practices that, whether we're talking about in my business or in your own life, that I'm sure you've been collecting about what works. And it tends to be about the sources. Where do we source ourselves? What are the ways in which we show up to be nourished? Where do we go to? What do we do? For me, a lot of it is connecting and being resourced by nature. It's also about having great conversations. Each of you are invited to identify where are the spaces and the places where you begin to resource yourself and make a list. The next piece is about identifying your surroundings. Where do you find yourself going to that depletes you? And where do you go that energizes you? And becoming more intentional in how you show up, and also how do you curate your surroundings? Sometimes it's just about, I'm gonna always have fresh cut flowers. Sometimes it's about, you know what, I'm just gonna take a walk every day when things feel a little stressed. How do we surround ourselves also with the right support systems? For me, it's always been about mentoring and also being mentored. And so who are the people, whether it's online where you go and you get that inspiration, or it's about joining masterminds or joining community circles, becoming more intentional about how do we actually engage in what's required for us to move from that stage on our journey where we currently are to what is our next step. And so I want to invite you to connect with me, whether it's through the QR code or through LinkedIn. But before we do that, what I want to invite you to think about is this journey of unfoldment that you've currently just been on. And to not have it be this exercise that meant nothing, but to have it serve as an intervention where you gathered with others and just for a brief moment, you talked about within yourself about what really matters. In an intimate way, you reflected upon what is my true next step? Not the next step that someone else may be projecting on you, but what are my true next steps? And who am I called to become during these times? Thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. Q&A?
Yes.
Any questions from?
Or comments, builds, concerns, anything. Oh, we got a couple. Okay, I'm gonna field it, or are you gonna? Yeah, okay, right here. Please. Oh, she was also as well.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Pass it to whoever.
Thank you so much. My name is Sabrina. I like very much your model when you mentioned about the desired expectations, because it's like a felt sense. And then move to the challenge. And I just would like some clarity maybe on when you're talking about what are the challenges and the strengths. Are you talking about the challenges for me to enter in that desired experience, or the challenge I foresee in order to achieve that desired experience? And could you give some example of one, like going through the both sides?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it works very differently, right? So, for example, a lot of times when I'm working with organizations, a lot of the challenge is actually mindset. And then we realize, actually, yes, for example, our desired experience is to have a flourishing, thriving organization where we have peak performers who are doing X, Y, and Z. And then you realize, oh my gosh, we have a whole bunch of negative ninnies who are just like, this will never work, right? And so the shift has to happen at the level of consciousness. For some of you, it might be, I want to start a business. I counsel and work with a lot of entrepreneurs. And the biggest challenge for them, some of them, it could be, I don't have the startup capital, right? But you're like, okay, I have a desire to become an entrepreneur, to start my own business. One of the challenges I acknowledge is that finances will become a challenge. Or it could be that I actually live, I've researched some challenges of entrepreneurs in Portugal. Some of their challenges might be like my challenge is that I live in Portugal. And there's challenges with running a business here, right? So you identify what the challenge is, but it can also be an internal challenge. My internal challenge is that I'm suffering currently a lot of low self-esteem and I just don't believe that I can do it. So the question then becomes next, where is the strength in the system within myself? Or it could be actually, I'm a great networker. I'm great with people. And while I may not have the financial abundance right now, what if I made a commitment to begin to meet people and to network powerfully and going and showing up in certain spaces where I could realize that my network becomes my source of wealth that then will bring the abundance? Do you get how this works, right? For some people, it's going to be emotional in terms of the challenge. For some, it's going to actually be material. And some, it's going to be relational. Especially for some women, it might be like, my partner doesn't want me to, to become this kind of person. Of course, it could also be for men, but that's something I hear a lot, especially from women. As they begin to transform, their partners, men or female, may not want them to grow. It's different than when it's on the other foot. So is that making sense for you, right? Yeah. So this is just the beginning, and then you flow it through. You say, okay, what's the action I can take, which is what I just showed you. Go to networking events. Maybe you'll create a schedule. Every week I'm going to a meetup in Lisbon, right? And then you're going to identify, okay, what's the action? And you're going to say, okay, what's the affirmation? When I feel like I'm really getting bogged down in my finances, how do I connect to either the spirit of abundance, or how do I remind myself that, hey, I'm on the path, I'm on the journey? So it's about, what do you say to yourself when things are tough that reactivates you? But if we really take it into the motivational context, you're creating your own motivational strategy. That's really what we're talking about, is creating a strategy for ourselves to become more and to experience more of what we desire, essentially becoming visionary future makers. Yes, we had some questions over here. Oh, yeah, first.
Thank you for the experience you created for all of us this morning. My question is about the hero's journey. So I see it as a sort of lonely walk, because no matter who you surround yourself with, right, we all battle with our own things. So no one can walk in for us. So I'm just wondering, from your experience, going through that process and getting to the place where you're at right now, what helped you to go through those moments, maybe being in the void and going through those challenging times when you see where you're going, but still you gotta walk?
Yeah. My best friend, who we've been friends almost 18 years, which is phenomenal. I remember when I first began to have challenges, she would say, you don't live here, you're just walking through. You don't live on the street, you're just passing through. And so that's one of the key, realizing that we are constantly in a state of flux. And realizing that for me, part of it is about having an activated, beautiful vision, exercising my imagination, having something that's motivating me, that's reminding me, that's galvanizing me. And the other part is about making better choices and realizing that sometimes where we find ourselves is a result of the choices that we've been making. And we have to make different choices. So for me, that's been the biggest key in terms of navigating that, whether it's with friends or alone. It's realizing that at any moment that I feel stuck, I have to remind myself of the power of choice. And then I begin to become almost like a scientist. What are you choosing right now? How are you thinking right now? Who are you connecting to right now? What needs to shift in this context, internally or within the actual context itself? Very often, we actually don't take the time to really dissect and look at what's really happening in our lives. And so a lot of the work that I do with leaders, with businesses, is about, let's open it up. Let's really get clear on what are the mechanisms. Does that answer your question in the beginning? Yeah. Is there any follow-up question? No? Okay, good, 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 good. But it is a lonely journey, and it's not an easy one. But I think the key is we have to be willing to continue to do the work and know that the work itself never ends. And no matter what level we find ourselves, there's always something. And we have to embrace that after a while and realize that, you know, the joy is in the journey and find it as much and as often as we can. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you so much for your contribution today. I really appreciate it. As far as I understood it, for me, it's about evolving consciousness. I heard you saying that it's accessible for every culture, the concept that you shared with us today,
The symbols.
the symbol. And personally, I've been thinking more about it. We are very privileged to live interculturally. My life is very interculturally, and I have made taken risk to get there. Yes, thank you. I was wondering often if the evolution of consciousness has become a matter of access and privilege. And I would like to just open the discussion of like, what can we do to make it more open for, if I may say, people who are not at that stage of awareness or who do not have the financial strength to buy horses or do not see the responsibility in it. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think that the question itself has a great deal of complexity to it, right? In that question, it presupposes that unless you have wealth, you can't be conscious. And I know I'm originally from Nigeria, and we have a lot of conscious people. And so we have to decouple that perspective that money is the thing that holds us back from being able to be conscious. We also have to acknowledge that this notion of being conscious, especially from a Western context, is usually someone meditating and beam me up type thing, right? There's images associated with that, and I really question that perspective because consciousness is about how we show up. That person who may not have the abundance may be showing up as a daily bodhisattva, showing up and giving and loving and showing up in a different kind of way. And so, yes, there are the challenges in terms of making more resources for certain types of development available for those who may not have as much resources. But the fundamental perspective of, is consciousness the precincts of the privileged? I don't believe that. I don't fundamentally believe the core of that. But I also understand that in the question, it's very much a perspective that people have. But if we want to talk about how do we provide more resources and more access, it starts from us saying, from what I have, how can I actually make sure that someone else can participate in something that would actually nourish them and grow them and support them along their journey? Does that make sense? I mean, let's keep engaging.
I fully understand the point because when I think.
And this is an attack against you. It's just speaking about the.
Is that it's made the way the industry is making it available.
Yeah.
It might occur that is a matter of privilege and accessibility.
Absolutely.
I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
I think it's consciousness is all there is. Right?
Yes.
But what I'm curious about is like, how can we actually embody that in our
Exactly.
day-to-day life? And I have some different types of people in my life that sometimes
Yeah.
they don't have a minute to breathe.
Yeah.
They can tell me
Yeah.
what they're talking about.
So this is great. Yes.
Whatever to catch.
Yes, because what you just spoke about, meeting people who don't even have a minute to breathe, that is not something that is only about people who don't have abundance, right? There's people who have tons of abundance who still have that same issue. So we have to acknowledge if that's the case, something else is going on here. It's about our relationship with life itself, right? Because those people who may not have the abundance are still dancing in their communities, are still connecting in deep ways, are still connecting to mentors and being able to have their own version of unfoldment, right? And so I think the difference is, yes, this is about consciousness, but the conversation we're having is about the unfoldment of human potential. which is a very intimate thing about what is your potential and how can you activate that and inhabit that and then make a contribution from that. And each person's contribution is going to be different. But exactly what you're speaking about, the notion of we're so busy that we don't take the time. But when we talk about making a difference and contributing to communities, that is so available on so many levels, and we can talk about that. Yeah.
So I know we have more questions. Ozioma will be available
Yes.
afterwards to converse. We have one more program now.
I do want to say thank you so much for every single one of you who showed up in this moment and said yes and asked questions, and I'm available. Please find me on Instagram at Ozioma. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, and know that this is not just about the personal context. If you also have challenges or questions about your business, et cetera, or your community work, I'm here and I want to engage. Thank you so much.